Whatever you like. Cool. So hello everyone, welcome to DevOps Playground. Yet another DevOps Playground. For those who joined in the office, for those who joined online, a quick word on what we're doing here. So we started as a funny initiative back in the days when we used to be called ECS. Now we went through the long journey and we're called Global Logic after being acquired 18 months ago, give or so. What this meetup is about, we want to create a platform for people who like to do tech, who like to experiment with tech, and we're trying to deliver the hands-on workshops when you can learn by doing. So we always provide the environment you can play around, you can break, you can destroy. Yeah, it's all on us. So that's the principles we believe in and we're trying to stick to. Today we will have a session about HashiCorp Sentinel, which will be led by Ole Salami. He's a HashiCorp certified trainer. Are you?
Yeah.
That's what I've been told. I still don't believe, but he knows what he's doing. So yeah, you get a free training by a certified professional to learn how to write a better Terraform code using the Sentinel policies. So without the further ado, I'll give the mic to Wole. Oh, you got yours. And yeah, hope you will enjoy it. Yeah, he will give you the details on how we're going to proceed with the session. So yeah, enjoy it.
So, we're going to start with what is Sentinel. Right. Sentinel is a framework for implementing governance policies as a code. It has its own language, and also it has a CLI for testing and running policies, which we're going to work with today, actually, in the lab. So, where is Sentinel used in Terraform? It's run between the plan and the apply of a run. If cost estimates are enabled for a workspace, the Sentinel policies are checked after the cost estimates are collected. Arguments are the inputs to Terraform resources and data sources. Each resource and data source also exports certain attributes that are computed during the apply. These are called exported attributes. But since the arguments as resources are also exported, it is common to use attributes to refer to the union of a resource arguments and exported attributes. So here you can see a Terraform run without Sentinel. So it's the usual VCS, which is version control. And then from there you go to Terraform Cloud, which can also be Terraform Enterprise. And then also, then you have your plan and apply, and then you have your new infrastructure. But this is it with Sentinel. As you can see, it's the same process, except this time you have in between the plan and apply, you have your Sentinel policy. So if it fails with your enforcement level, let's say set to hard mandatory, then that means yeah, you won't get to the apply stage at all. So yeah. So what Sentinel does not do. It doesn't do continuous security checks. It doesn't do audit. It doesn't audit previously deployed systems. It also doesn't analyze executable contents of a VM, containers, etc. And it also doesn't limit runtime actions of deployed applications. Basically, an application could be deployed which opens security holes at runtime. Sentinel can't detect this. We have now the Sentinel policy enforcement levels. Here you have advisory, soft mandatory, and hard mandatory. With the hard mandatory, you will get you won't be able to progress at all. So this cannot be overridden by anyone. Whereas with the soft mandatory, it means that you will get notified that your policy did not pass, but someone with the right permissions will be able to just go in and override it, and then you can go to your apply stage basically. And advisory is more like logs, so you would just be notified saying that your policy failed or passed, but it won't hinder you from progressing your Terraform run. So customers often create new Sentinel policies as advisory, then transition to soft mandatory, and eventually to hard mandatory. We now have the Sentinel policy sets and policies. Sentinel policies are added to Terraform Cloud and Terraform Enterprise organizations using policy sets. They are usually created in version control repositories, but it is also possible to use non-version control backed policy and upload files to them with the Terraform Cloud policy set versions API endpoint. Non-version control backed policy sets can load a tar file, including a sentinel.html policy sets, definition file, policies, and Sentinel modules. And now we have Sentinel imports in Terraform. As you can see, we have the TF plan v2. This gives you data that were generated from Terraform plans. And then we also have the TF config v2, which is this input gives you data about the Terraform configuration. And then we also have the TF state v2. This gives you data about the current state of the workspace. And then we have the TF run, which provides you metadata for Terraform runs and their workspaces, as well as cost estimated data. So the v2 versions are more closely aligned to Terraform's internal data structures for versions 0.12 and higher. For this workshop today, we will just be focusing on anything to do with v2, basically. Right, and now we have standard Sentinel imports, there's a list of them here. I'm just going to show you the documentation site as well, where you'll be able to get more information on each of these. So as you can see, just bear with me. I'm not sure why you can see that. Right. Here you go. So those are the standard imports, and as you can see, when you click on any of them, you get information on what it does, and then what comes with it usually. So mostly, during this session, you will come across has prefix and suffix later on, which I will go in details. But for now, just wanted to show you the site. Okay, so Sentinel mocks in Terraform. Mocking is useful to simulate data which is normally provided by Sentinel imports. You can generate Sentinel mocks from Terraform plans in Terraform Cloud and Terraform Enterprise. You can then use these mocks when testing policies with the Sentinel CLI. Right. Testing introduction. As you can see here, you have import time. So that's one of the imports from Sentinel. And then is business hours. That's the name of the rule. And here we're just checking the time now hour. So if the current time, the hour part of it is equal to 9 or greater than 9. And then also we're checking for another part of the hour, which is less than or equal to 5 p.m. So that will be a business hour. And then in the main, in the main here, you can see that's the main is the part that actually runs the main policy. So in here you can have multiple rules, but you can only have one main, as the main is the one that triggers the policy. And then the main returns, runs the rule, is business hours, which returns a Boolean, either true or false in this case. So, and the policy itself is the test code, by the way. And then testing basic file layout, as you can see here, we have this file here. The import time is actually, the policy that's running here is called time.sentinel, which you can now see here. And then in order to test this, you need to have a test folder. And then within the test folder, you should have the same folder that is referencing the same name as the time.sentinel. So that will be time. And then within that, you will have the fail.json and pass.json. So those are the test cases, basically. And then, so this is an example of a pass.json. In here, it's saying that we're expecting the output to be true. So that would be the pass.json. And then for the fail.json, we will set the main equal to false. And then we have the Sentinel simulator, which is how you run the tests. So you can just run Sentinel. For help, you can just do --help, or you run Sentinel test, which can you hear me? All right. So so Sentinel test, and when you run Sentinel test, that runs the whole policy set, or you can just do Sentinel test and then space put time.sentinel. So that would just run a specific policy. And in this example here, they're just running Sentinel test, and as you can see, both test cases pass, and that's why you have the overall pass. Now we're going to move on to the labs. For the labs, I would, for those on YouTube, you will find the URL in the description for this, for you to get the your lab environment. You would have to visit. Just hold on. Right. So visit lab.devopsplayground.org, and then you put in there your meetup username actually. And hit submit. And then it gives you your username, password, and then the URL to your playground, to the IDE part, and then to the terminal as well here. All right. Just give me a second. I'm just gonna change my screen output to mirror. There you go. Right. Hold on. Just give me a second. I'm just trying to. All right, so now I'm logged into the playground. So also the GitHub link is also in the description for those following along. It starts with the installation guide, but you won't need to follow that, as the lab that we provided you has already got everything you need. So this is just for those that want to play around at home later on. Also, has some useful links for you to go and visit at some point when you want to get more familiar with it. Right, and for the first exercise, we're going to work with require access keys use pgp.sentinel file. Right, so the best way, the path to this would be to go into cd work dir, and then hands-on with HashiCorp Sentinel, and then you go into Sentinel policies. And now, if you were to expose that, you will see all the policies in here. But for this part, we just need the ID for now. So in here, require access keys. So, right, for this policy, what this policy will do is it makes sure that all the AWS IAM access keys require PGP keys. In this case, they have to be, they just have to have a key. They have to start with keybase, basically. So in order to do that, we have this policy, and then we also have the test case in here. So you can find the test case under the test folder, and then you find the name, which is require access keys, PGP, no, without the Sentinel, basically. Right, in here we have different test cases. So we have the pass, and then we also have the two fails, which is for invalid. One is for invalid value, and one is for missing value. So I can show you missing value. So this will be an example of a TF plan output that Sentinel, that Terraform would put out, and then you would be able to look for the value that here's where you amend it to match your test case, basically. So yeah. Now let's start with the first exercise by actually filling that in here. So the first part of this policy is an import. So it's importing this function called tfplan function, and then we're given an alias of plan. And this function that you're looking at here is actually provided by HashiCorp. They've made it easier for us to actually write policies by providing us with this commonly used functions, as you can see here. They're also well documented for those that want to have a look later on. So this first part is going in and just grabbing the import as a plan, but then within this function itself, it's also importing the tfplan version 2, as you can see here. And then it's also using strings and types. And then, so the next part was to get all the AWS IAM access keys from the plan output. In order to do that, we utilize the function that we just imported by doing plan and then find resources. So what that does is find resources. So this is it here, and this takes in the value of resource type, which is the AWS IAM access key. So it will check to see if there are any AWS IAM access keys, and then returns it to us here. So in this case, you're just gonna put in the type that you're looking for in here. So copy that and replace that with here. Oopsie. Right. Okay, so now the next part is we're now filtering every IAM access key that it found for this attribute, for the attribute PGP key. And then we also make sure that it starts with keybase. That way we know that it's, that's for whenever AWS is run with AWS access key, it needs to be encrypted with key. It needs to be when it needs to be encrypted, then it starts with keybase usually, and then you give it a name after that. So that's why we're searching for this, which is, you can see here, have prefix, and then this part here means it should return a message. So they all come with a message in here. Let me just show you. Right. So there are some messages in here in case it finds an error, not an error, but like it doesn't match what we're looking for, then it will return this message here. So you can set that to true, and if you set that to false, it means it won't display. I mean, it won't return the message basically. So let's put in the attribute that we're looking for here. And then the next part is now to check for any violations. So if it returns the message, any message in here, we're just looking for the length. So then we can then put in the rule to say if this violation returns null, then it's true. Otherwise, it's false, and this policy is going to fail. So let's test it out by running the test. So you can see the 3 different test cases that we ran. They were successful. We can also run the test again, but with verbose. This shows us more information by using -verbose. So for the fail cases, you can see why they were failing, for example. So it tells you here that with a value test does not have the prefix keybase. So this is for the invalid value, for example. And then for the missing value, it means that is null or undefined. So that's because PGP key wasn't defined there. So yeah, that's that for the first exercise. Let's move on to exercise 2. Here we are restricting EC2 instance type. I am going to show you the path for that as well. So this for this one, you would find it. So you find a test case within the test folder as well for restricting EC2 instance type in here. And here we are running 2 test cases. The first one is a pass, and the second one we're looking for the type C4X large, basically. And let me show you in here. C4X large, right. So this is the part that was amended for this test case to make sure it fails, because if you look at the types that we're allowing, it's just T2 small and T2 medium and T2 large. So this would mean it would fail when we run this. That's why we have it in the fail. Again, for this policy, we are importing the function plan again. And then in here now, we first define a list of the allowed types that we want. And then again, we're grabbing the resources and the resource type, which is all the AWS instances. So after we grab all the AWS instances, we now have to filter using this filter function to check for all the AWS instances, and then look for the instance type as attribute here, and then compare it with the allowed types. So we will have so this function is going to check for all the instance types, which I've shown you in here. So it will look for So this is an instance. So this is a resource type, and then it will go into what we're looking for here, instance type, and then it will check the result here with the list that we're giving it, basically. So, and then again, we have true for message. And then the next part is to check for violations, which is to count the amount of messages we get. If we don't have any messages, then it means true, otherwise return false. So it's time to check our policy. Right, as you can see, again, we have a pass overall. Right, let's move on to exercise 3. So for exercise 3, we require modules from PMR, which stands for Private Module Registry. Right, I'm just going to show you for that as well. All right, so as you can see, this one already has the policy written for you. So you can just start by running the test. And you see some errors here, which says, the error says, require modules from PMR.Sentinel. Import module function is not available. That's because in the test directory, which is here, require modules, here we go. So we have the pass test case here, and then in the failed test case, we didn't put anything in there yet. So for this part, you can copy it from here and just paste it like this. So this tells you that use this module, as in use this common function that I just showed you earlier on. But for this one, we're not using the TF plan, we're using the module functions. So I can show you that as well. Right, this one only has one function in here, which is to require modules from PMR. So this is a custom module written. And this one uses the tfconfig import version 2 as well, rather than the tf plan, and then also the strings. So I can show you how the config file looks like. So the config file has a similar look to the tf plan. So yeah, in here we have gone through the module part. Now this is another way of actually having arguments into passing arguments into your test case by using the param. So in the test case, in the module in the policy here, we are saying we're using the param organization, but we haven't actually given it any values here. So here we're using the same style, where we're saying param address, but we give it default app terraform.io. So if we don't give it a default, then we have to provide it in the test case, basically. Here we don't have to actually provide it anymore, since it's been we have given it a default value already. So the default value here is the organization-wide playground, and then the mock itself, where it should look for the mock, where the mock file is, which is in the same directory called mock tfconfig-fail, which I've just shown you as well. And then the test result that we're expecting is false. And then what this policy itself actually do is import the module function, and then also declare a variable called address with a value of app terraform.io, and then declare another variable called organization, which doesn't have a value, but the value is going to be passed in the test case. So we're just saying that any module that's being used within Terraform has to come from this address and from this organization. That's literally it. and then we run this. Since this function returns a boolean, true or false. Right. Now, if we were to run test case again, in here, we get a pass. Right, now we're moving on to exercise 4, which is to enforce mandatory resource tags .sentinel. You'll find the file in the usual folder, which is enforce mandatory resource tags. And then also the tests cases can be found in test, and the same name, which is enforce mandatory resource tags. Here we are testing for the pass as usual, which is the tags to be valid, and then the fails will be to test for invalid tags or missing tags. Yeah, so as you can see here, it's literally the same output here. I mean, the same as previously, but this time around we're using the tf-plan functions this time. And then also the source, which is to the actual test mock file. And then we have the invalid tags and missing tags. So if I was to show you the mock file for this one, is the missing tags part. So the best way to look for it would be resource changes, as this is what it looks out for. And then you can see here we have tags, but here we have owner, but the tagging that we are actually requiring is owner and purpose, so therefore we're missing tags. So that's how you mess around with your mock files for those test cases. Right. So now I can walk you through the policy itself. Right. So for this one, we are actually doing 2 imports. We have the tf-plan functions, and then we also import in the tf-plan itself, but with different aliases. So tf-plan and plan. This section here is for any custom functions that you may create yourself. So as you can see here, we have the common functions in here, which is in the root folder of the Sentinel policy. And if you were to if you wanted to write your own custom functions, you would create another folder in here, call it maybe AWS-functions, and then you can then reference it within your code, as we're going to create our own custom functions within this policy itself. But for this lab, we're not going to use a directory for it. We're just going to paste the common custom function in here instead. But this is how you would reference it if you were to do it yourself. And then here, this part, we are right. So here we're just creating our resource types. So we can just add that in here now. This is a list of all the resources that we want to be monitoring. So we want to monitor S3 buckets, instances, and VPC and IAM roles. And then, so all these resources are the only ones that we're going to make sure they have the mandatory tags, which is here. We're going to create another list. So we have owner and purpose. So those are the ones. In terms of the value for those 2, we're not monitoring that, but that's also a possibility. But for the sake of this lab, we're just doing just the key only. So which is owner and purpose. And now we have our custom functions here. Right, so this custom function will find resources with standard tags, and then and it takes in the resource types, takes in those lists, just make sure that anything that is within the TF plan, as you can see here from the import that we're looking, this one looks directly into the plan import, and then checks for all these resources, and if it finds any, it will return it, and then we will then use it in here. So we're calling the function in here actually, and passing in the resource types. But yeah, so after we get all the resources, we now check whether they have all the they meet all the tagging that we required. So this is the mandatory tags we're passing in there, and then the attributes that we're looking for is tags, which I've shown you in the mock file. So in the mock file, we are looking for, as you can see here, so we go into tags, that's the attribute that we're looking for, and then from there we're just going to grab, if there's any tags, we're just going to grab these. Again, we are outputting the messages as true, and then now we are creating our main rule. So here again, we're looking for the length of the messages in here, and we're expecting it to be 0. If I put in a 1 in there, for example, then we're expecting it to be a 1, and therefore it will be true. So it is going to be true for 0 in this case. And now let's run the test. Oh. Yeah, I've been logged out. Just bear with me. Okay. So now I'm back. Let's test it out now. Right, so as you can see, again, it's all overall pass, since all the 3 test cases passed. And again, if you wanted to see more information, then you can just run verbose, which will give you more of the logs of you know, what was being outputted. So in here we only have owner, and we're missing purpose, and then yeah, and the same thing here, where it tells you exactly why it's failing. It's saying that here we're missing the requirement items purpose from the list, and so on. So there you go. Now we have a bonus exercise, which is to prevent auto-apply in production. So this part looks for any workspace names that have prod at the beginning or at the end of it. And the test case for this is also within the test folder, and you'll see it called prevent auto apply in production. Here we have different test cases. We have suffix, prefix for different fail and passes, which I'm going to explain to you in a bit. So earlier on I showed you the function. Hold on, just bear with me. Now I just want to open up the policy. Here we go. So in this one, we're using the TF run import. We're not using any custom functions. And then we're also using the strings, which I showed you earlier on from the documentation. In here, we have let me just show you first the TF run, how it looks like. So the mock for TF run is here. As you can see, we have the workspace details that we want, and the name is DevOps Playground resource, and it finishes with prod. So that's suffix in terms of Sentinel. And then the prefix part is at the beginning, as you can see here, prod. And the same goes for the other test cases. So for this one, you have three options. You have two options of or different ones, but in this case I'm showing you two options of how you can actually write this test case. So I'm just going to show you the solution here. Just replace this function here. Right. The first option is to use regular expression. In Sentinel, it's called matches. As you can see here, it's looking for anything that starts with prod. And the second, still as part of it, is now looking for anything that finishes with prod as well. So it's or. And then the second option would be to use the imports, string imports, which has the prefix and suffix. So the prefix is for beginning. Does it contain prod at the beginning, and does it contain dash prod at the end? And then you literally just run an if statement saying if it's true, if the workspace auto apply is true, which here, if the auto apply part is set to true, then yeah, then print out this message and then set the validated to false. So the message will then be this workspace has this workspace, and then the workspace name has auto apply set to true. And then you then call the rule in here, and then you call it in your main part of the running of the policy, and this will just be set to true or false. So now you can just test it out. You have all the test cases as pass. And then, so the next part will be then, since we have a whole policy sets in here, as you can see, we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 policies, and sorry, yeah. So in here we would, so far we've just been running them individually. So if you wanted to run them all at the same time, rather than specifying the file, you just do Sentinel test, and this will run all the test cases and show you the output in there. As you can see, all of them passed. And now let me also show you the part. This is the part where you actually declare the enforcement levels. You declare this in the sentinel.hcl file. So in here, you also do the function imports, like you were doing in the mocks, and then you now tell it the name. So those are the names of the policies that you've been working on so far, and then you give it the enforcement level. So you don't have to declare name in here anymore. Previously you had to, but now it works without doing that as well. So you can just say policy, the name of the policy, and then enforcement level. So we have hard mandatory, and then the last one as self-mandatory. And also you can also add advisory if you wanted to as well, but I just had them like this. Right. Now, okay, so for this part, now that I've shown you how the Sentinel CLI works, here are the 8-step methodology for writing and testing Sentinel policies, from writing and testing the Sentinel policies for Terraform Guide. So the first one is to create a Terraform configuration that creates the resource. And then the second one is to create a workspace that uses your Terraform configuration. Third one would be to then run a plan against the workspace. This will then allow you to then move on to the fourth part, where you download the mocks from the plan that you just generated within Terraform Cloud or Terraform Enterprise UI. And then 5, you write a new Sentinel policy, and then you create test cases and test your policies with the Sentinel CLI, as we just went through. And then you revise your policy and test cases onto the latter all pass. And then you finish with deploying your policy to Terraform Cloud, Organization, or Terraform Enterprise. Just as a FYI, Sentinel in Terraform is only available to team and governance or business customers, or a Terraform or enterprise customers, basically. So for those that are non-paying customers, you can test it by what we just did, the way we just did, using the CLI. But if you wanted to actually implement it on to your Terraform environment, Terraform Cloud or Terraform Enterprise, you would have to be a paying customer. So I'm just gonna show you how that looks. Sorry, it just keeps changing this back. All right. Okay, so if you have a free account with Terraform Cloud, you would see something like this, where in your settings you won't see anything to do with Sentinel, so you won't see policy sets in here. But if you are on a plan, then if you were to go into settings, you then be able to see policy sets. In here, you would then go into connect a new policy set, because after you finish creating your policies, you would put them onto GitHub, for example, and then link your GitHub to your Terraform account. And once you do this in here like this, you just click on GitHub, and then you would then see your policy repo in here. You select the policy you want, and once you select that, you then be directed to this page, which allows you to give it a name, description, and then you can choose which workspaces you want these policies to be applied to. So you can either enforce, you can actually say you want it on all workspaces, so new or existing, or you just select it. So as you can see here, I've selected the workspaces I want to be affected by this policy set, and then I just save it. And that way, if I were to go in here, you can see this one is for the resource that checks whether auto apply is set to true. In this case, you can see, let me show you. So it ran all these policy sets, and then it failed here. But because the enforcement level was set to soft mandatory, since it failed, I can still override it since I have the right permission for this part. So yeah, that is that. I can also show you another workspace. So this is one of another workspace where the policy failed based on resource tags, and this is the kind of output you will get. So it will give you all the details that you provided basically in your policy itself. And then, so as you can see here, it says value is false, and then it tells you why it failed basically, which is in here. So you get the print message, and then you get why it failed, that is missing the required items owner purpose from the list. So there were no tags involved in here. So just bear with me. I just need to change it back to mirror. Okay. That's it. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now.
The question is there any advantage for using Sentinel over creating preventative measures like AWS configures?
Yeah, I mean, Sentinel is just another way of preventing engineers that are acting in good faith, basically, because we all write codes, we write Sentinel policies, and we just, every time you write it, you just assume it's good. So, you know, so whether it actually matches, I mean, it complies with the company's policy or not, you know, sometimes we don't know those things. So Sentinel is just an additional layer to that. So yeah, definitely.
I had a question. I might have missed it at the beginning, but where does Sentinel sit in terms of, do they get auto run when you when your plan runs? Is that when the Sentinel policies are run?
Yes, so it sits between the plan and apply stage. So it will run for your selected workspaces. So if you selected your policy to be run with all the workspaces that are within your Terraform account, then it will do that. Otherwise, if you select it for if you say only run for this workspaces, then those workspaces that you've selected, whenever you run anything in there, then Sentinel is going to kick off.
Cool, thank you. Any other questions in the room?
Awesome.
Cool, thanks, Wanda. Oh, no, we've got a question.
Oh.
So all the policies has to be set into the one workspace, or we can combine different policies, and it will be on different workspace. How we can define it?
Oh, that's a good question. So in terms of, let me get it right. You're trying to say if you can have multiple policy sets attached to one workspace.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can do that, because as you can see, when you create a, when you go into Terraform Enterprise or Cloud, and you say, hold on, maybe I can show you. So in here, policy sets. So as you can see, you can create multiple policy sets. So if for this one, for example, you can say you want it attached to all workspaces. So then that's already got like 5 policies already that will run for all workspaces. And then now you create another policy set that will just be for the same workspaces again. So you can create as many as you want towards that. But it just means every time you make any run, so if you have a lot of policies, it will just run all of them at the same time together. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
Cool, thanks very much, Wale.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you for everyone. Peace out.